Okay, so we're diving into something a little different today.
Yeah.
We're going to take a deep dive into a presentation about transportation, safety, and design.
Okay.
And it's based on a keynote address
Ah.
at a statewide transportation conference.
Interesting.
This one was in Wichita, Kansas.
Right.
So we're actually going to be listening to an audio recording of the speech.
Gotcha.
And I will say, just as a heads up, the audio quality can be a little bit uneven at the beginning.
I see.
But bear with us. I promise the insights you'll gain from it are definitely worth it.
Great.
So what we're going to try to do today is really pull out the most important ideas about traffic safety and honestly some surprising downsides of how we design our roads.
Interesting.
And then also the financial realities that are kind of shaping infrastructure choices.
Makes sense.
And what we really want to understand is how these broader trends that the speaker talks about might be playing out right here where we live.
Right here.
In Deer Park, LaPorte, and Pasadena.
Okay, so thinking locally.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
So one of the things that I think is really striking about the presentation that we're going to listen to today is that the speaker really challenges some of our most basic assumptions about what makes roads safe.
Yeah, like what?
Well, he starts off looking at what happened during the pandemic.
Ah, interesting.
Which, as we all know, kind of threw a real wrench in everything.
For sure.
Including conventional wisdom about traffic safety.
Okay, how so?
So, I mean, for so long, the thinking has been that fewer cars on the road equals fewer crashes.
That makes sense.
Equals fewer fatalities.
Yeah, that's the simple logic, right?
Right. Fewer cars, fewer deaths.
Yeah.
That was sort of the established theory.
Basic theory, yeah.
And then the pandemic hits, and all of a sudden we have this really massive drop in driving.
A lot of people staying home.
Yeah. People are working from home. People are just staying home.
Yeah.
Less travel overall.
Yep.
And so you would expect to see, with fewer cars on the road.
You'd think so.
Fewer deaths, right?
Fewer accidents, fewer fatalities.
Right. But instead,
we actually saw an increase in traffic deaths.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
So it's like the opposite.
It's totally counterintuitive. Yeah. And it really was unexpected.
So what happened?
Yeah. And so the initial explanation that came from traffic safety officials, as the speaker points out, was basically that all the drivers had just gone crazy.
Oh.
Like people were...
What, just like...
speeding more, not buckling up.
Got it.
Driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So they're saying it was just bad driver behavior.
Right. It was very much focused on the choices of individual drivers.
I see.
That they were just behaving badly.
So it was the driver's fault.
It was kind of like we all collectively decided to become reckless drivers.
Pandemic stress, I guess.
Maybe it was the stress of the pandemic. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the speaker offers a different perspective.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
He calls it a more, what does he say? A more scientific...
A more scientific way?
Yeah, a more scientific way to understand what happened.
Interesting.
And what's fascinating about his explanation is that it hinges on something that we typically dread.
What's that?
Traffic congestion.
Oh, congestion.
Yeah, he suggests that more traffic jams can actually lead to safer roads. And that sounds totally counterintuitive at first, right?
Yeah, I mean, you think more cars, more accidents.
Right, and more frustration.
Definitely more frustration.
But his reasoning is really interesting.
Okay, lay it on me.
When you actually dig into it.
Yeah, let's unpack this.
So the key factor here is speed.
Speed.
In heavy congestion. You know, everyone is moving very slowly or even completely stopped.
Right, stop and go traffic.
And so the potential for serious injury or even death in a collision, it plummets.
So the severity goes way down.
Way down.
Interesting.
Because it's just a matter of physics.
Due to physics.
Right. Lower speeds mean less energy and an impact.
Right. Less force involved.
Right. And the speaker reminds us that the energy of a moving object increases with the square of its speed.
That's right.
So even a small reduction in speed can make a huge difference.
A huge difference.
In how severe a crash is.
Gotcha.
So the speaker connects this directly to the pandemic. He says that basically with virtually no congestion during the pandemic.
The roads were empty.
Right. Yeah. Drivers were able to operate on these roads that were designed for much higher speeds, but they were driving at those higher speeds.
And there was no...
without that natural speed regulator of other vehicles around them.
Makes sense.
So there's actually some evidence to support this.
Like what?
As traffic has returned to pre-pandemic levels.
In some areas.
In a lot of areas. Yeah. We've actually seen a decrease.
Oh, wow.
In traffic fatalities.
So the fatalities are going back down.
Right, which suggests that return of congestion is playing a role.
An unintended role.
Right.
In safety.
In safety, yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
The speaker even jokes that...
yeah?
You know, some safety initiatives might be getting credit for a decline in fatalities.
Okay.
That's simply due to more gridlock.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes you think twice about what really contributes to road safety.
For sure.
And this kind of leads us to another really thought-provoking concept that the speaker introduces.
What's that?
Which is this idea of forgiving design.
Forgiving design, okay.
So forgiving design has become really kind of a fundamental principle in modern highway engineering. Yeah. It's this idea that you design roadways in such a way that if a driver makes a common mistake, the consequences of that mistake are minimized.
So like they have room for error.
Right, room for error. So if you think back to, you know, the early days of motoring, you know, roads were often very narrow, winding. Yeah. They had hazards like trees or ditches right at the edge of the road.
Very unforgiving.
Right, very unforgiving. And so a simple lapse in attention could be disastrous.
Absolutely.
So forgiving design was really a direct response to that. Okay. It was an effort to make roads more tolerant of human error.
Okay, so like what are some examples?
Yeah, so the speaker gives some good examples. Yeah. Wider lanes, obviously.
Okay.
Offer drivers more wiggle room.
More room to...
if they drift a little bit.
All right.
Recovery areas.
Recovery areas.
So those are like the shoulders.
Gotcha.
And gentler slopes beside the road.
Right, right.
Those provide space to regain control.
Yeah.
If you stray off the pavement.
If you go off the road.
Right. And then clear zones.
Clear zones.
So those are those obstacle-free areas that allow a vehicle to slow down more safely if it leaves the roadway.
So you're not running into a tree.
Right. Exactly. Right. So, and the speaker is, you know, he's quick to give credit where it's due. Okay. He emphasizes that, you know, there have been significant improvements in highway safety and a dramatic reduction in fatalities per mile traveled.
Gotcha.
Over the decades.
Over time.
Right. Largely thanks to these forgiving design principles.
That's right.
So, you know, he points out that driving on a modern interstate is statistically far safer than it was a century ago.
Interesting.
But here's where the speaker throws a curveball.
A curveball.
And this is where it becomes particularly relevant to us here.
To our area.
Right. In Deer Park, LaPorte, Pasadena.
Okay, so how does this apply locally?
Well, he argues that applying these same forgiving design principles in urban environments.
Okay, in cities.
Right, in cities and towns can actually have some really negative unintended consequences.
Oh, so it backfires.
In a way, yeah. It's like a double-edged sword.
Like a double-edged sword.
Right. So while it enhances safety at high speeds on highways in our towns and cities, it seems to send a different message.
A different message
to drivers. Well, you know, all that extra space, those wide open lanes, the absence of immediate visual constraints.
Yeah, nothing blocking your view.
Right. It kind of subtly communicates that there's a large margin for error.
Like you have space to mess up.
Right. And as human beings, we tend to subconsciously take advantage of that perceived safety.
I see. So we get more reckless.
Right.
Because we feel safer.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and this is where the speaker brings in...
Brings in what?
The work of Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
Right.
Yeah.
And his book,
Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow.
It's a great book.
And he talks about System 1 and System 2 thinking.
System 2. Okay,
Let's
break that down.
Okay,
yeah. So System 1 is like our brain's intuitive, almost automatic mode of thinking.
Right, like a gut reaction.
Right, like if you instantly recognize a familiar face.
Yeah, like, oh, I know that person.
Right, and then System 2 is slower, more deliberate, effortful type of thinking.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to solve a complex puzzle.
Yeah, or doing your taxes.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And so the speaker's argument is that for most of us, most of the time, driving operates in System 1. You're not really thinking about it.
Right.
It's more automatic.
We're not consciously calculating every steering input or constantly analyzing every potential hazard.
Gotcha.
It becomes largely automatic.
Right.
And so because of this, he argues that people tend to drive at a speed.
At a speed that
simply feels right and comfortable within the physical environment of the road.
Like what the road looks like.
Right.
Okay.
Often regardless of what the speed limit sign says.
Wow.
So when we design a city street with these wide
forgiving features
that
visually resemble a highway, even if the posted speed limit is, 30 miles per hour, our System 1 thinking kicks in, and we drive at a speed that feels appropriate for that kind of road.
So maybe closer to 45.
Right. Maybe 40, 45.
Even though it says 30.
Exactly. Wow. And we've all experienced that, right?
Yeah, for sure. That disconnect, the speaker even mentions this, manual on uniform traffic control devices.
The MUTCD.
Yeah, the MUTCD, which is basically...
It's like the
rule book for road design and signage across the country.
Right.
And how it doesn't really adequately distinguish between the design needs of a high-speed road.
Like a highway.
Right. And a low-speed urban street.
Like a city street.
Right.
Gotcha.
So, this over-engineering of our local streets for higher speeds, combined with these artificially low-posted speed limits, creates what the speaker calls...
He calls it a strode.
A strode. It's actually a term that he and his organization coined, and I think it really captures this really common problem. That we see
in our communities.
Yeah, in our communities.
Yeah.
So think of a strode as a hybrid. It's part street, part road, and it's trying to fundamentally
oppose things at once.
Like what?
It's trying to move traffic quickly through a place while also functioning as a vibrant urban environment.
Oh, that's tough.
Right.
With businesses, pedestrians, and local access.
Yeah, it's like trying to do everything.
Yeah. And the speaker has this really great analogy.
An analogy, okay.
He calls the strode...
He calls it...
the futon of transportation.
Oh, the futon.
Right.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's failing. At both of its intended purposes.
At both. Right.
It's not efficient at moving large volumes of traffic.
Yeah.
At speed. Like a true road.
Right.
But it's also not a safe or economically productive urban street.
It's like the worst of both worlds.
It is. It's the worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
And then there's what's really interesting, too, is the financial angle here.
Oh, the financial angle. Okay. So while individual businesses that are located on a strode, like a big box store,
like a big Walmart or something,
right? Like a Walmart, might generate a significant amount of tax revenue,
sales tax, property tax,
right? Sales tax, property tax. The value generated per acre of land in these environments is actually really low.
Oh, that's interesting.
So this is because so much land is consumed.
Consumed by
all this sprawling infrastructure.
Like what kind of infrastructure?
Massive parking lots.
Oh, yeah. Huge parking lots.
Wide setbacks, multiple lanes.
Yeah. It takes up a lot of space.
Right. And it
doesn't contribute as much.
It's not as efficient.
To the local economy as a dense, walkable urban area.
I see.
And then... from a safety standpoint.
From a safety standpoint.
Stroads are,
What?
Kind of the worst of both worlds in that way, too.
The worst of both worlds again.
Right.
Okay.
Of the potential for high-speed crashes
right.
from the road aspect of it.
Because people are going fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Combined with the complex interactions of pedestrians, cyclists, and turning vehicles.
Oh, right.
That you find.
All that stuff.
On a street.
Right, so it's like a mixed environment.
Right, so it's this dangerous mix.
Yeah, dangerous mix.
Where a momentary lapse in attention can have really serious consequences.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the speaker emphasizes that the fundamental distinction here
is
between transportation within a place, which is a street.
So a street is within a place.
Right.
Okay.
And transportation.
Between places.
Which is a road. Okay.
And he argues that those
demand
totally
different design approaches.
Yeah.
And so this leads to this really important discussion about the long-term financial health of our transportation system. The money, right?
Yeah.
And the speaker argues that
the
era of, seemingly unlimited transportation funding.
Like free money.
Right, free money.
Yeah.
That we've kind of grown accustomed to.
Yeah, we've just assumed it'll always be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Is coming to an end.
Oh, wow, that's scary.
Yeah. So it's a pretty significant shift in perspective.
Big change. Especially when you think about...
Right, when you consider how much economic growth since World War II has been predicated on these massive infrastructure spending projects.
Right, we build roads to grow the economy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So for decades, transportation projects have been seen as the primary engine of economic development.
A way to grow, yeah.
And the funding taps have seemed...
relatively open.
Yeah, relatively open.
Just pour money in.
Right.
Yeah.
But the speaker points to the growing pressures on our transportation networks.
Yeah. What?
So we have,
we got
an aging population. With changing needs.
Okay.
We have younger generations. With different transportation preferences.
Right. What? Like
bikes,
walking,
public transit. Okay.
And then we have
increasing demands
for
investments. And all of those things, right?
Right. In all the new stuff.
And all of this is happening while our existing infrastructure
is aging.
And requires increasingly costly maintenance.
Yeah, stuff's wearing out.
Yeah, it's wearing out.
Gotcha.
So, he cites data from the American Society of Civil Engineers.
ECE.
Okay. Yeah. Highlighting a massive shortfall in the funding needed.
A shortfall just to maintain our existing interstate highway system.
Wow. Just to keep it running?
That's
a lot.
And to close that gap. Through the federal gas tax alone.
Yeah.
He says it would necessitate.
It would take...
a truly substantial increase.
Like how much?
Something on the order of...
Like 80 cents a gallon?
80 cents per gallon.
Wow. No one's going to like that.
Right. And that
doesn't even factor in the likely decrease in driving.
People would drive less.
Right. That would result from such a
price hike.
Right. Which would
make it even worse.
Erode the funding base.
Right. It's like a vicious cycle.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the speaker uses this example
of
the Highway 91 expansion in California to illustrate how the traditional methods of calculating the benefits of highway projects can be quite misleading.
Misleading? Like how?
So they're focused on these tiny incremental increases.
Increases in rush hour speeds.
Like you save 2 minutes.
Right, like you save a minute or two.
Yeah.
And then they extrapolate those minuscule time savings across huge numbers of drivers and many years.
Many years. And so these projects can appear to generate these enormous economic benefits.
On paper. Right.
That don't necessarily translate into real-world improvements.
For most people.
Right, for most people.
It's just a few people benefit.
Right, it's a very small number of people who are actually benefiting.
Yeah, that's kind of sneaky.
It's a little bit sneaky, and it reveals this potential disconnect.